Smokey, my brain is broken. And that brokenness reveals itself all the time to me. But something happened the last couple of weeks that exemplifies that. And if you listen to this podcast very often, you're going to find out more and more just what a mess my brain can be.
I would imagine a broken brain's a bad thing.
Well,
it's not that mine ever broken.
It does cause some issues, and most recently, I've been growing my hair long. Not that should be a thing. I hate to come across as vain. That's my version of a midlife crisis. It's the broke man's
Anthony Goodrow, vain.
But that's I can't really afford a sports car, so I've gone with the cheapest thing I could find.
Oh, speaking of Anthony Goodrow, folks, that's Anthony Goodrow over there. This is Larry Smoke over here, and you're listening to Unclear Thinking yet once again, to just hear how muddied our thinking actually is. Pardon the interruption. Continue.
No, perfectly fine. So I found somebody to cut my hair in Columbia, and because my experience around here with I'm not a big fan of barbershops. I don't like to go in and wait an indeterminate amount of time to get a haircut, and they're all going to cut it the same way anyway, regardless of what I tell them. So I finally found this girl in Columbia that cuts my hair really well and does exactly what I tell her to do. So she's cut it for the last year, but 2 weeks ago, and you have to call and make an appointment. You have to leave a message with your phone number, and they'll call you back and make an appointment. 2 weeks ago, I called, and they usually call back within an hour or two, and I got no return phone call. So that's kind of odd. They are busy. They're really busy. So then I went to work, and I had several days where couldn't make an appointment anyway. So the next week I called back, left a message, same thing, no return phone call. This is where my broken brain comes in, because I start thinking of all the things I could have done wrong to make them mad to where they won't call me back.
That's not broken brain, that's persecution complex.
It is.
It's got to be my fault somehow.
It comes from an honest place, though, I'm sure. Now, finally they called me back, and my thoughts were maybe she left. Maybe she took a job somewhere else, and they're so bitter about it that they don't want to tell me where she's gone to work. So I'm left on my own to find out.
Okay, I know what kind of hair salon type outfit you're describing now. I've never used one, but I know what you're talking about now.
So it's me. It's all me. It's just the way my mind works. It's frustrating, but I take the blame for it. But so a week later, my phone rings. I'm at work, and it's the caller ID says it's from there. So I answered the phone, and she's like, "I am so sorry. We have been calling the wrong number. The girl wrote your number down wrong." And we finally talked to the girl, and she had your number, and she gave us the right number, so we're calling you back. And I'm like, see all that frustration I wasted? All that I just, it's like I crafted an entire story, another alternate universe where I'm the victim. That type of brokenness in my brain, it kind of gives me it's caused a fascination for the subject of psychology. I read a lot of psychological type stuff. It's just a subject that fascinates me to kind of figure out why I think the way I do and things like that.
Because the more we understand how screwed up we are, we'll just know how screwed up we are, right?
Yeah. And every once in a while,
we're going to fix ourselves.
Every once in a while, we might stumble onto something that just maybe helps just a little bit for a little bit of time, and that's good enough sometimes. So I stumbled onto this article in Time Magazine from the September 10th online edition called 6 Things the Most Organized People Do Every Day.
Which you were kind enough to forward to me so I could gander as well.
Yes. This is my work is very chaotic, and my home, because you want to tend to apply these things. It's a work-related slant to the article, because I guess that's probably where people feel the most unorganized. Whereas at home, you kind of cut yourself a little bit of slack on being unorganized. But I guess the techniques work both ways. But the 6 Things Most Organized People Do Every Day by Eric Barker. He's it's basically information from a book called The Organized Mind: Thinking Straight in the Age of Information Overload. And that right there caught my attention because if anybody has information overload, it's myself with my phone. I'm no different than a lot of people. I love looking at my phone, Twitter, Facebook, news, whatever. Inane subject I can find to read about to entertain me for 30 seconds. I'm happy. So, but there are some 6 strategies in here that some are good, some don't really fit, but we can go through them if you like and kind of pick them apart and see if you think they're worthy or not.
Yeah, I have opinions about his opinions.
The first one is basically get things out of your mind and written down. He calls it the VIP's brain is empty, and that's a good thing. Is that something? Are you one that writes stuff down you have to do, or do you kind of keep it?
Well, yes and no. Eric Berker was the author of the article. Who wrote the book? It was a neuroscientist. Daniel Levitin is the name of the neuroscientist.
Yes.
Who wrote the book. Levitin suggests that the president and CEOs don't worry about having other things to do because they have other people to keep track of that for them. And Levitin suggests that by writing down what you have to do later and prioritizing when it is to do it, you won't have to worry about it when you're doing each one. Well, we said this off air. I said this to you off air. That's a wonderful sentiment, and I hate to disagree with it. Well, I'm not so sure if I disagree with it. I just don't see how applicable it is because, okay, let's say I've got 15 things to do, and I'm going to sit down and figure out which is the most important. Well, that means by definition, it's on my mind. I'm taking time and brain power to figure out how to save time and brain power later. And then he says the president, CEOs, important figures, are in the moment. Well, yeah, they can be. They have people to tell them to do something else. I don't. And Levitin is saying that by doing it myself earlier, I don't have to do it later. Well, then I'm still doing it. Tell me why I'm wrong, please. I mean,
well, I see your point. I see your point, but I'll tell you my experience, and I do it 2 different ways. I keep for home type stuff, chores, that sort of thing. I keep a list going in notes on my phone.
And I use Apple reminders. I do. And I keep Outlook at work. I would rather use my Apple calendar at work, but I'm forced to use PC at work. Dadgummit.
Well, we all have our burdens to carry.
Right. So, I'm sitting here saying that it's impossible to do or impractical to do, and yet I'm doing some of it. So that's why I say I'm conflicted about how to feel about his opinions. I agree with the sentiment. I'm just not sure that the detail that he suggests one utilize it is very practical. And again, tell me why I'm wrong.
I can't. All I can tell you is from my experience that if I have a lot of things going on at work, I carry a small spiral notebook in my lab coat. It's like 4 by 5 inches. It just flips over and over. The pages just flip over and over. And I keep notes in it, the things that's the quickest way to access them rather than go to, a database or something like that and fire that up. I keep a list of things, or I tend to keep a list of things that might come up during the day that I'm going to have to do later. And what I have found is if I just say to myself, okay, I have to remember to do this later, there's a good chance I'm going to forget it.
Of course, yeah.
Or I'm going to worry about it. Now, what I found is if I write it down in a list form, if there's several things, just by the fact that I've written them down, they are embedded in a new place in my brain, which seems to be more accessible. Just something about hand to paper, pencil to paper, puts it somewhere that I don't forget. It's not that I refer to the list again. Now I remembered it because I've written it down, and I don't know if there's any scientific basis for that, but that's just how it seems to me. Once I write it down, it's a lot easier to remember.
You've purged it from short-term memory. And you're
Probably so.
Or maybe short-term memory is not the proper neurologic phrase, but you've purged it from the section of your brain that you use to calculate more immediate processes, I guess. I'm groping for the right terms.
Right. Well,
So I mean, maybe you're onto something.
but something that struck me in that section that kind of hit home was where he talks about the rehearsal loop, and that is kind of a fancy name for just kind of going over something that you've got to do
Working
while
up
you're
anxiety
working
over
out.
it.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example. Like, I may be sitting at the computer at work, entering data or doing something like that, and I know the next thing I have to do is calibrate an instrument or do some procedure. And as I'm doing the work at the computer, I'm going through the process of step by step of what I'm going to do next. And so that kind of hit home. That seemed to be true in my case. Whereas he's saying that if I wrote it down to do it, that I would not do that. I don't know if that's true or not.
And maybe I'm having a little bit harder time relating this to my profession. 'Cause your job, I would imagine, from what I've heard you say, you probably have a lot more uncertainty to it. There are more things. You probably have more fires to put out.
Yes.
The unexpected. My job is the same crap every day, time and time and time. For the most part. I mean,
Right.
nothing's an absolute, but I mean, my job is very routine. I pretty much know Monday through Friday, on kind of on a 2-week cycle. I've got to do this Monday, this Tuesday, this Wednesday, this Thursday, the next Monday, and about every 2 weeks, everything kind of starts over. So there's not a whole lot of, oops, I've got this special meeting with the CEO of UHS Hospital Systems next Thursday at the Hilton. That doesn't happen. So,
Right.
So I don't have a whole lot of difference in things that I have to keep track of. Now, can I miss this? Do I have to do that? I've got the same stuff I've pretty much got to do every day. So again, this is another reason maybe why I'm having a hard time applying this to my own life.
Could be because I'm not really sure what your day looks like, but
It looks very dull.
sometimes I
Sounds like I need a new job, doesn't it?
So I would love dull for at least a little while anyway. But I guess the bad thing is my job is the same thing over and over again. They just all happen at different times, and I don't know when they're happening. I don't do anything really, special or different. It's just I don't know when they're going to happen. So, next section, he calls it, "Mr. President, your next meeting is about to begin." I summed it up with using alarms and blocking time, which is now that's where it really doesn't apply to me because I can't block time. I can't decide when I'm going to do this and when I'm going to do that. I can set alarms, which I do. I as far as work goes, there are certain things that I do that take certain amounts of time, and rather than worry in the back of my head about how much time I have left, I'll just set an alarm. And that frees my mind up to do other things. The alarm goes off, I go, oh yeah, now it's time to go back to this thing I was in the middle of and finish. So that's pretty helpful.
Yeah. And I guess in a way I've done that too. I use I don't mean to turn this into an Apple commercial, but the alarms setting on the iPhone, I use that quite often. If I've got to remember to swing by someplace on the way home, I can set it to remind me as I leave the office, go off and okay, I gotta swing by here and do this. So yeah, I see that point. And Leviton Barker, the author and columnist, reporter, both suggest using modern smartphones and all the wonderful applications therein. This assumes that the reader of this article and somebody trying to apply it to their life is actually proficient in the use of these devices. And we've both cast enough doubt on the savability of the human race as far as intelligence goes anyway. I'm not so sure there'd be a whole lot of people that could be bright enough to make use of these things. Again, I hope I'm wrong.
Well, there are probably 6 people in my department that still have phones, and one just got a smartphone in the last couple months, and I get more questions about how to do this and that on that phone than I ever care to answer. Bless their heart.
Yeah, not to change the subject. That's a very similar thing. the Apple iCloud, the fappening several weeks ago, a couple of months ago, all the celebrities that had the private
Yes.
photo. Well, and okay, that's a horrible thing. Don't get me wrong, but it really wasn't Apple's fault. It was the celebrity's fault. You have this device, dadgummit, learn how to use it. All of these photos were hacked backups that were then restored on other device. Well, don't back up your device to the cloud, dingbat. I'm sorry that this happened to you, but so again, this is just an example. People have this technology, and yet so few, and us, because I'll talk about the human race in general. So few of us know how to use it properly.
That's no valid, perfectly valid. But back on your reminders, I'll tell you one. You mentioned it, but I was going to bring it up if you didn't. Was the feature that I love is if I have to remember to do something when I get home, I'll set my reminder to when I pull up in the driveway.
Yeah, I've done that too.
To go off. That's
There's been things
that's a
that
wonderful
when I
thing
get home,
to
I
me.
got to remember to do such and such. Set the reminder to buzz about 50 yards before I hit the driveway, and then as I'm pulling the driveway, oh yeah, okay, I'll start the laundry or whatever.
Yep, I love that feature. That's a good thing that I've used many times. That's probably the most applicable thing out of that section. On to number 3 would be set up filters. Simply put, is what he calls it. Yeah, I don't really have that luxury. I don't know.
I wondered about how many of us. Oh, I'm just going to ignore everything from the boss. That way I'll have more time.
I guess I could check Twitter less, maybe. I don't know.
And that's I question his terminology there. Is that so much a filter, or is that just self-discipline?
Yeah.
Okay, you could filter your social media use by taking the apps off your phone, but that requires the self-discipline to do it, and then to not reinstall them when you really want to know what's going on Facebook.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And so, again, I'm not sure if the phrase filter, well, he uses the phrase filter failure. If we're setting up a quote-unquote filter, then I take that to mean you're setting up something that you don't have to have any control over anymore, that it does whatever you want to do for you. Well, if you can at will ignore or change the filter, it's not much of a filter, is it? And so I guess it's just, to me, it's a question of whether is it a issue of am I setting up a system that will keep me efficient, or do I just need to improve my self-discipline?
Yeah, just change behavior.
Maybe they're one and the same. I'm ignorant enough that I'm not really sure.
Well, I think you're right. Just change behaviors that are bad. They would kind of be bad behaviors in many situations. Sure.
He even mentions a good low-tech solution to freeing up some mental workspace is to quote-unquote hide for part of the day. Go where people cannot reach you and get solid work done. How in the heck do you do that? That's
a good question. I can't keep people from interrupting me when I have earbuds in. I may have ranted about this before.
Yes,
when
you
I'm
have,
wearing
yes. You're right. I'm fortunate. My office at work, I have my own potty. That doesn't even work. I'm getting text messages while I'm on the throne.
Maybe we just need to change other people. I don't. That should have been number 7 in this list. Since we're trying to stay practical, I guess.
And for the umpteenth time, I hate to sound like I'm trying to just poo-poo the entire philosophy behind this article, because I do agree. It's a wonderful sentiment. I just continue to wonder, is it a question of self-discipline more so than it is actually doing something different? Well, I guess self-discipline is doing something differently, isn't it? You got to straighten me out, Goodrow.
I want to get to one thing eventually. I'm not sure how to get into it, but one thing that I've been doing for the past few months that actually is sort of basically cognitive behavioral therapy on yourself, which can be very helpful. I found it to be very helpful, and I guess it would fit in the first bullet point on this article, which was get things out of your mind. But maybe that's where that should have gone, but I'll get to that. That's my way of saying that. But you're not entirely wrong. No, we're not robots, and we can't just change our behaviors automatically.
And maybe my reaction to this article is a case of the old country saying about hit dog hollers. Maybe I'm having this kind of reaction because at some level I'm seeing more of myself in it than I would like to admit. Maybe that's it.
Possibly. I guess the Section 4, the incredible power of good enough, he uses the phrase satisficed, which is kind of a goofy way of saying satisfied at sacrificing. That's what he's trying to, two words he's trying to put together. I'll read the excerpt from the book that he puts down here. It's not too terribly long, so I don't mind reading this part, but recent research in social psychology has shown that happy people are not people who have more, rather they are people who are happy with what they already have. Happy people engage in satisficing all the time, even if they don't know it. Warren Buffett can be seen as embracing satisficing to an extreme. One of the richest men in the world, he lives in Omaha, a block from the highway, in the same modest home he has lived for 50 years. And it goes on and on about Buffett, but that's essentially the...
That was a Sheryl Crow song, wasn't it? Wasn't there a lyric in a Sheryl Crow song about not having what you want, but wanting what you have? I should have looked that up before we started. It just somewhere in the back of my brain here. Anyway, no, sorry, didn't mean to get off topic.
No, that's not off topic.
And again, I guess he's referring to this sentiment in the sense of getting the job done good enough as opposed to getting it done perfectly.
Right.
And then we get into well, whose definition of good enough? It may be good enough for me. Is it good enough for the boss?
And then there's my OCD component that kicks in sometimes when I'm doing something.
I'm definitely guilty of that. Because I know for a fact there are things I do at work that I do better than my bosses want it done, but I just can't stand to leave it at a level that would satisfy them. I can do better than that, so I'm guilty of it too. Hit dog hollers.
Well, that goes back. That kind of leads me back to we mentioned delegating earlier. Sometimes I don't want to delegate something because I know I do it better, right way. I like the way I do it, and I want it done that way. And the only way to get it done that way is to do it myself. Yeah. So
if you want something done right, do it yourself. I mean, we've been hearing that for generations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But again, I see the sentiment in this, and maybe I guess I'm pointing out where it's not maybe. I'm seeing more of myself in this than I was prepared to admit initially. So you're bringing me around.
I knew I'd sway you eventually. But on that topic, when I wash my car, I have two ways of doing it. I've got my A+ version, and I've got my C- version.
You wash your own car?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have anybody else touch my car.
I'm too lazy.
Flashing back to moments ago and doing it right to do it yourself.
What?
I've tried to let my kids wash my car before, and I just end up doing it over.
See, I don't have any free labor, so.
But they never quite get all the brake dust off the rims, and that kind of irritates me. So that's half the point. I guess I need to learn to back down sometimes if I really don't have 4 hours to kill on a
right
thing
with
in the
you,
car.
brother.
Number 5, he calls it, Mr. President, there's been a change. And that's just essentially just adapting to change on the fly. That's pretty self-evident. I mean, if you want to be good at that, you just change how you react.
I'm not sure how to think about that one either. And again, you may have to talk me down off the ledge on this one. When change comes up for the commander, I'm quoting from the article now. When change comes up from the commander-in-chief, he shifts seamlessly because his aides have already revised the day's plan, so he stays calm. You can stay cool too, but it requires a little bit more effort. Well, if you could exert that effort, you wouldn't be reading this article and trying to apply it to your life in the first place, would you? I mean, again, of course, the president doesn't worry about it. He has somebody to worry about it for him. And nobody's going to get past his aides to interrupt him. The aides can get interrupted. Well, this article is trying to get the reader to set up our own thought processes in a similar fashion, but we don't have anybody to take the interruption for us. We have to take the interruption.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I get it's a self-discipline thing. I don't really see how there can be any. I don't know. I'm just being a contrarian. I don't. I'm bad.
I just think that's one of those things where you're either good at it or you're not.
I guess that's the position I'm trying not to fall into, because if you get any bad habit or vice, I just can't do it, other people can. Well, we know that's not true. You bite your nails. I can't stop. Some people can, but I can't. Well, yeah, you can. People have quit. So it can be done. maybe this is hitting too close to home. Maybe this is hitting more close to home than I ever thought until we started talking about it.
You're in denial. No, I'm not.
That's probably the word.
That's always the perfect answer to you're in denial. No, I'm not. The last one is have a war room, and that's essentially set your area up for to maximize your ability to concentrate and focus on your job, which is difficult for me because I share a lab. I work during the day, and there are people that work in the same place at night, so it's not mine exclusively. Now, I try to set mine up as best as possible, and they seem to work as hard as they can to mess it up.
It's like having a roommate.
Yes.
Which I would imagine sucks. I'm fortunate. I don't have to. I have my own office. I don't have to share. And people, business contacts will come in and say, "Oh, your office is always so neat and organized, tidy." And then I step around from the desk and look at it from their viewpoint, and I wonder, what in the heck are you seeing? Because all I see is clutter and mess and chaos and disorganization. And maybe that's yet another sign of my broken, disorganized mind, that's all I see is chaos and disorganization, and maybe what everybody else is seeing is actually there.
Well, they're probably not attaching anything to what is on your desk, and you see what specific work each thing on your desk represents, and they just see things that are straight and neat, something like that. I don't know, I'm trying to see from their perspective.
Or maybe I just need hypnosis. All through the articles, it mentions ever see a photo of the president's desk. Does it have piles of paper on it and 1,000 random Post-its? No. Well, that's true. We don't see any of that clutter on his desk in the Oval Office. We also never see his desk in his study off the Oval Office.
Mm-hmm.
That place may be an absolute disaster. But we'll never know, will we? I mean, we know that's where Bill and Monica were getting it on, so there's some kind of clutter in there.
Maybe we'll find out from the next guy that jumps the fence at the White House and makes it that far.
Sum it up for us, Anthony. Tell me why I need to go get hypnotized and study this article and make it my life's work, because obviously this is striking me at a much more sensitive place in my well-being than I ever thought it would at first.
Well, let me tell you what I was alluding to earlier. That's something I've kind of gotten into. And I don't want to come up sounding like some chanting hippie, but there's a...
I know you better than that.
There's a as somebody who has trouble focusing anyway, and I have, I'll do just hundreds of different tasks at work every day that I have to, throw paperwork on top of it. Most of my work is unexpected. It comes in. There aren't times when certain work comes in. It just comes in when it comes in. There's a behavioral therapy out there, cognitive behavioral therapy out there that I've been hearing a lot about. It's getting a lot of traction in the psych community. There are articles about it all over the place. And basically, a cognitive behavioral therapy is a treatment. It focuses on examining the relationships between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. In other words, how does my mind process things and causing me to react certain ways to different things? If I can change the way my mind perceives things, I can change the way I react to things. And there's a technique out there called mindfulness. And basically, that is the state of active, open attention on the present. That means you're basically focusing on exactly what's in front of you at that time. Because my mind tends to wander. If I'm doing paperwork, like I mentioned earlier, I'm thinking about something else that I'm going to have to do later. And it inhibits my ability to do that paperwork accurately, not necessarily quickly, but efficiently.
Because at some level, we consciously or subconsciously think that the paperwork is a low-intensity task.
Right.
So we start delegating more of our brain to what we think is a higher-intensity task, and yet that lower-intensity task suffers for it.
I make mistakes, and if you've ever filled out FDA paperwork, you know that you make a mistake and that just makes more work. So there's very specific ways you have to deal with mistakes.
Well, that sounds much like an insurance carrier prior authorization form, so I guess in a way I can correlate.
I can only imagine how that must be. But it's pretty simple, but it takes practice, but the results were very, very good. Just simply making my mind, being conscious of what I'm doing and being conscious that I am being conscious, allowing me to focus on what I'm doing. Really, the tension goes down, the stress goes down, because as I'm thinking about other things I need to do, the stress is going up because I'm not doing things I want to do because I haven't completed this task yet. It's led to a huge stress reduction and fewer mistakes, and just overall it's been really positive. Now, if you read enough of it, you'll see there's a component of meditation. But being my angle is from the psych community and their take on it, most of them don't really give any value to that. There's not much value on meditation from the psychological therapy community overall, but specifically not in this case as well. But it's just, it takes practice. I've been practicing for a while. I've gotten kind of bad at it lately because work slowed down and I didn't really need to, so I got lazy with it. But now that work's picking back up again, I'm finding out that it's something I need to do regularly. But if you're in that situation, or anybody listening is in that situation, give it a shot. Just basically, it's pretty simple. Just clear your mind of what other activities you have to do or are in front of you. But just focus on what's going on right now, and I think you'll see an improvement in your mental state.
Well, apparently I need to start reading it, living it, loving it a good bit myself, because I'm not comfortable with how uncomfortable this topic made me, and I need to get at a better state of mind with it. I've always prided myself at being fairly organized, but I read this and I'm wondering if I couldn't do a whole lot better.
Well, we probably all can.
Well, folks, I tell you what, we'll include a link to the article on the website, unclearthinking.com. It'll be in the show notes. Any thoughts, ideas, notions, insults you want to hurl our way, we'll be glad to take them. Unclearthinking@gmail.com if you want to do it that way. You can shout out to both of us on Twitter. I'm L.A. Smoke, and he is at Anthony Goodrow, and we're findable a bunch of other places too, but that's the best place to find us. So let us know what you think.
Please let us hear from you.
Well, let's go chew on that, Goodrow. We've got things to do. We need to make a list and see what we got to do next.
I think I've lost my list, but I'll put that on my list to find my list.
There you go. All right, gang. Till next time. Toodaloo.
Bye-bye.